Hello and welcome to EPR with your favorite environmental enthusiasts, Nick and Laura. On today's episode, Laura and I discussed our closest animal encounters, maybe our coolest animal encounters. We talked to JD Reinbott about corals, Antarctica, and embracing representation in the scientific community. And finally, octopuses have 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. They have 2 hearts pumping blood from their gills and 1 pumping blood to its organs. They also have 1 main brain and 8 ancillary brains in each arm that are used as preprocessors. So the arms can independently figure out how to open a shell while the brain is working on something else. How about that? That is...
It's freaking amazing.
Crazy. Oh, wow. All right. Well, hit that music.
All right, today we have a special NAEP plug / shout out for the upcoming Environmental Professionals Day. This has been established worldwide on April 15th to recognize all the hard work that these individuals like yourselves do every day to create a more just and sustainable world for all living things. The day has been initiated by a consortium of organizations, including way too many to mention here. So go to the website and check those out. If you want to learn more, you can follow along on NAEP tweets on Twitter to stay in touch with it, and we'll keep you updated as we get closer. We appreciate all of our sponsors, and they're what keep the show going. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, please head over to environmentalprofessionalsradio.com and check out the sponsor form for details. Let's get to our segment.
But we should talk about animal encounters today because JD had some unbelievable ones. And if I'm being totally honest, I may cut them out of the episode because they're too good. And
you can't.
A penguin sitting in your lap. No, thanks. That's unbelievable.
Oh, spoiler alert. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, but no, it won't be in the episode. So you guys won't know. But no, if you had, what's your most incredible wildlife encounter? There's got to be something up there for you.
Okay. So there's most incredible, right? Funniest, scariest. I think the most significant maybe is when I went on the trip to Kenya and we were staying at the Lewa Conservation, and our tent was close down around the border, their electric fence. Mm-hmm. And a lion, shortly after we were walking, you're supposed to walk to your tents from the main hub with a guide, right? So,
yes.
But for some reason we were like, oh, we'll just walk back by ourselves. And literally we're walking down the path and I was like, what's that noise? And I could hear something huffing. And then I was immediately terrified. It's so dark.
Of course.
And then we went, my boyfriend at the time was just like, well, whatever, do. And I'm like, typical. And we get back to the tent.
I could take a lion.
I still hear this noise. And actually, I think we actually did go back to the guide, probably at my urging. And the guide was walked with us and he's like, oh yeah, see, there's an elephant out there. And so he took his flashlight and he's shining out. And sure enough, I don't know how far, a football field, there's an elephant brushing against a tree or just kind of rocking back and forth. But it was so dark. It was really hard to see what are you looking at? Mm-hmm. And then we get back to our tent and 10 minutes later, literally a lion sounds like it's about to step onto the porch.
Oh, cool.
It's low growling, hunting, and there's a scuffle. And I'm like, oh my God, is something happening with the elephant? But I've never been so scared in my life where I couldn't move.
Oh yeah.
We had a radio to call the Rangers, but it was on a table and I was not moving to go get it. It was like Jurassic Park scary. I'm in a Jeep and there's a dinosaur coming and I'm I'm not moving. It might see me.
What happened to the goat? Yeah. Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
So that's really the most just intense, I guess, encounter that I've had.
Yeah, that is pretty intense. And
it's hard to describe. That sound was just,
yeah.
At the same time, it was this is so cool. I'm so scared.
Exactly. And it's crazy how powerfully loud they can be. And yeah, it just sounds like murder. When they're being loud, it's scary.
Right.
Yeah.
Death was coming for something.
Yeah. Something.
Please don't be me.
Yeah. Right.
What about you?
Oh man. It's hard to narrow it down. But I don't know. Like, I think the Galapagos trip and just in general is an easy one to talk about because of how much we saw, and there's the standard stuff where you're seeing like reef sharks, and I got kicked in the face by like one of the other people in our group because he saw a 3-foot shark and freaked out. And I'm looking at him
no.
Dude, it's 50 feet away from us and it's only 3 feet long. It can't even take, it could maybe take one of your fingers if you're not paying attention. Like, come on. And there were birds diving down to eat fish like on either side of us. That was really cool.
Oh, wow.
But, I think probably the most incredible experience we had there was with sea lions. And so they have Galapagos sea lions. They're slightly smaller, in quotes, than regular old sea lions, but still plenty big.
Right. Still as big as you, right?
Oh, no, the males are bigger for sure. And, there's this thing in the Galapagos where it's like you're not supposed to be within 6 feet of the animals, but, that gets broken all the time by the animals, as long as you're not the ones breaking it, right? But sea lions are, when we were there, they were in mating season, and they're more aggressive than they normally are. And, God, they're funny. They were like literally, it's like, oh, you guys have steps? Yeah, thank you. We'll just lay here on all these steps and you will not get to your boats, kind of stuff. And they'll come up onto boats and just, sleep, eat, pee, whatever, all over the back deck of your boat, just hanging out like, thanks for the ride. Appreciate that. See you later. Awesome. But we get to a part and they are doing it's a beach where there's one male and all these, females and everything. And they're doing the sound. You're just like all the time. And like our guides are telling us like, yeah, they're going to be doing that so long that their voices will give out. And they don't live long enough because they're just so, all they're doing is like, mine, over and over again. And so we have that in our minds, and then we get into the water and we start snorkeling, and like one of them comes like right up to our faces. And I mean, like we are trying to get away, and like move. And he's just like, oh, hey, how you doing? You doing all right? Yeah, I'm just hanging out having, these are my ladies here. If you want to, just, you guys have a fish or something? And it was just very nonchalant, very casual, but there's this huge predator like staring me right in the face, and just like, okay.
Oh God. Cool. Until you say the word predator, you're like, oh, that's cute. And you're like, oh wait,
I know.
This thing could eat my face.
Yeah. It looks cute, but it's, they were telling us, you need to stay away from them. They are aggressive. And like it was just much more playful. There were some pups around as well, but it was still really scary because we just, you don't know what their intent is when you're doing that and you're just trying to move. And then, later in a similar area, there's one that's just literally sitting there staring at us, not moving at all. Much more intimidating. It was just staring, like deadpan face. And I'm just, so that was wild. That was quite an experience, but it was really fun, really cool.
Awesome. I have so many more. Like when you start going,
I know, right? I know.
That's what's so awesome about connecting with environmental professionals. Like once you start talking, there's so much to connect on. We all love to hike and travel and have animal encounters and, appreciate wildlife and all that. So it's a rich and wonderful life. And we've been talking about, in conjunction with Environmental Professionals Day, something that we've been wanting to do is the field notes. So tell the folks at home what our field notes is, Nick.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, we're actually trying to do a thing. Like we had a meeting and, these kind of stories just come up when you talk to environmental professionals, right? And it was like 30 minutes of us telling field stories back and forth. And so we really would love to have you guys submit your stories to us. We want to put them on the air. We want to hear from everybody as well. When we do our live event, we're going to try to ask for some of those from the audience and see if we can get some fun ones as well. So that is going to be, we really do want to do a field notes episode because I think there's too many stories. Like Laura and I'm itching to tell you so many more right now. And it's just, I'm just one person, right? And so, same with Laura. Yeah. So the stories are out there and there's just a lot of fun. They're just so great. So that's the kind of thing we want to do. Yeah.
And so you don't have to actually submit it. Just post something on Twitter, on Instagram with the hashtag field notes, and we will scan for those. And, maybe we'll talk about somebody else's fun animal encounter or something scary, weird that happened to you into the field. I think it's great too, just for us seasoned professionals to relive those moments, but also for young people to take a look and see like what's in store for you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. And sometimes it doesn't have to be like when you're working either. Like we just told 2 stories of us being on vacation, and so we just want to hear about it because that's interacting with nature's kind of our thing. So please do share.
Interacting with nature is kind of wild.
Yeah. Wow.
All right, let's get to our statement before I say something else.
Yeah, right. Hello, and welcome back to EPR. Today we have JD Reinbott on the show, a conservationist in the coral restoration field. Welcome, JD. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We really are genuinely thrilled to have you here today. Like the knowledge and experience you have at such a young age is really impressive.
Sure.
And it really is. But your love of ocean started like really early, right? So what was it like for your family to grow up with someone so dedicated to oceans?
Hi, Mom. Hope you're listening to this. I would like to first and foremost apologize to my mother and my family because I basically commandeered and overtook any family vacation, any family dinner, anything along the lines. I was very fortunate to have a family that was very supportive and kind of fostered my passion and my education for the marine realm, but they definitely had that at a cost. I would not want to go on vacation if there was no aquarium, there was no beach, no ocean, no nothing. And, it was changing the entire itinerary. Still kind of doing that to this day. We just recently had a trip out to Hawaii and we had the entire thing mapped out. And then I was like, I want to go diving with manta rays. And they were like, we don't really have the time for that. And I was like, that's nice. We're going to go ahead and change the itinerary and we're going to make it so I can go dive with manta rays. But I would say growing up, it was really cool for them. I think they got to learn a lot with me and kind of grow with me as I became more of a marine conservationist and a more of like a marine educator. But I definitely think there were some times they kind of were like, oh my God, JD, we get it. Like, let's go somewhere besides. Right? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So you said that they grew with you. Do they also at this point love the ocean, love the beach? Or are they like, okay, when he's not here, we're going to like the desert, Like, what's it like?
They have really kind of transformed into individuals who have an equal level of passion for the ocean itself. It's been really cool, especially with my mom. My mom and I are like two peas in a pod. I love her to death. She has always kind of grown up around water, but never really had a higher level or like kind of understanding of what that actually means and what it looks like. And it's really cool to now see her talk about the work that I'm doing and also talk about the different organisms that I interact with and be able to become this advocate for marine organisms and marine ecosystems. I know my dad and my mom are also both thinking of getting their scuba certification so they can get underwater with me. So there's definitely been a lot of progression and growth with them as well. And as someone who works in that field and wants to be able to share my passion with everyone, just like I'm currently sitting talking to all of you guys about it, it's truly like this amazing holistic experience of getting to share that passion and knowledge with them.
Okay, that's so cool. And I'm going to nerd out here with my love for Little House on the Prairie. So last week I was watching an episode where two parents of one of the kids were going to get divorced and the kids were having discussion about the parents. And the kid literally said, and I thought this was the coolest quote. And I wondered like, when would this apply? And I think it applies to your story right now. He says, I think they have it all wrong. Kids should grow up and have parents, not parents have kids.
110%.
So kudos to you on raising such good parents.
I try my best. It's not easy. Sometimes they're difficult.
Oh, that's great. So your love for ocean started early. When did the coral click in?
Yeah. So I went up to college up in Maine, so pretty much the furthest place away from where I'm currently talking with you guys down here in the Florida Keys. I went to a university called the University of New England, and I was really going to want to focus in originally on like marine mammal rehabilitation, and they had some interesting turtles and other organisms kind of thrown in with that project. But things didn't really work out, and that program actually got removed from the university altogether. And that kind of was like a, oh crap moment. Because I had my niche and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. This is going to be my entire life. And then I kind of got like, the hypothetical rug pulled out from underneath of you and you're like laying on your back being like, oh my God, what's happening? So I kind of bounced around, and the field of marine science and the studying of it is so broad and so over encompassing that it can really be overwhelming at some points. But I kind of stumbled upon this coral biology course taught by a professor named Dr. Jerry Fox. And apologies, Jerry, I took the course because it had a lab-based travel component that went down to Belize. I could not care about corals. I was like, I'm going to go post on my Instagram and be like, look at me drinking like a mojito on the beach. Like all of you guys home in Maine and New Jersey, where I'm from, are freezing to death. Like, haha. I sat like all the way in the back of the classroom, was like, I'm going to skate by. I'm not going to pay attention. And then my professor opened her mouth. And I don't know what it is about Jerry. And I have talked to her. I have emailed her. I have texted her so many times and we still can't figure it out. But I literally closed my laptop and walked to the front of the classroom and like changed my seat. And that's kind of the whole journey where it started. In Belize, everyone was, taking pictures on the beach with their drinks and, chasing after, eagle rays and turtles. And yes, I was doing that. But I was also that really weird kid who was frantically holding his breath with his snorkel in his mouth, trying to stare and like analyze these coral colonies. And I think it's just kind of the weird and unusual nature of them that kind of got that hook in my mouth for me, and is still currently in my mouth because I can't shake corals for the life of me. But yeah, so it all kind of started down in Belize, and I've traveled a lot from there. I've worked extensively in multiple ecosystems and multiple regions, and I really think coral is what I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing.
That's very
incredible.
cool. What's happening in the world of coral restoration right now?
In what sense?
Well, just are there any exciting projects you're working on, or any new technologies, or things that are happening? How's it looking out there for corals?
Yeah. Or is it all doom and gloom? Because that's what we worry about,
You kind of get a mix of some doom and gloom, and then you get a mix of hope. Obviously, it's an ever-going battle, and with a lot of the anthropogenic factors that are facing our coral reefs today, there are some times that you're like, oh crap, is this going to work out? But there's always like these constant innovations and constant developments within the field that are kind of helping bring these corals to light and helping restore the reefs in the grand scheme. A lot of organizations are doing both in situ and ex situ nurseries where they're basically growing and cultivating these corals. And then, some are stress hardening, looking into super corals or corals that are more resistant to certain strains of disease or bleaching or temperature, so on and so forth. I'm not going to sit here and ramble about all the high-end coral stuff.
Right.
And working to put them back out on the reef and again, preserve these critically endangered ecosystems. A lot of my background and a lot of the stuff that I like to focus in on is more so the community engagement side of it, because I think the act of restoration is amazing, and getting to say that you're putting these corals back out on a reef is so freaking cool. But if you don't get other people to, one, acknowledge the impacts that they're having on the environment and what that does, whether they're in some landlocked state in the middle of the US or down here in Florida, and then two, getting them to actually start doing something about it, I kind of feel like the entire restoration process falls apart. So I personally love the community engagement, and that's always developing and always shifting because we as human beings are such dynamic organisms. There's a lot of ways that individuals can come in and learn about the different methodologies, the different processes, educate themselves on what a coral is, because half people think a coral is, a rock, and it's like, it's an animal, try again. And getting to have those shifts and those cultural adjustments and those mindsets to start to foster and support these reef ecosystems. So some people you may talk to may say, yep, corals are kind of on their way out, but I personally challenge that. And I think looking at some of the interactions that I've had with people and the passions and the fires that have been ignited in them, I think our reefs have a very bright future ahead of them. So it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah. But I mean, thank you for saying that too, because I really love hearing that, there's some optimism, but community engagement is supremely important. Like we talk about that a few times on the show about lots of different things. So what are you seeing kind of like in the communities that you go to? Are you actually going to landlocked states and being like, hey, corals are important here. Let me tell you why. And you're seeing that in kind of a level of engagement and encouragement?
A little bit. I am not as lucky to be able to travel as much as I want to go to landlocked states and spread the good word of coral reefs. But a lot of the individuals that I work with are, visitors down here in the Florida Keys who have never heard of a coral reef. They don't really know when they look out and see this beautiful blue, pristine ecosystem and this beautiful blue ocean that they want to hang out in, that down below these reefs are shifting from vibrant ecosystems to graveyards and rubble fields. So a lot of it has been working with individuals who, again, don't have that background. And one of the most profound experiences I had was I was running an educational program, and we, take our time and we're like, hey, everyone, go ahead and introduce yourself, let us know why you're here, what you're interested about, any questions, comments, concerns. And I get to this one individual who was from some landlocked state. I can't remember because my geography is absolutely horrible. I'm a scientist for a reason. And we get to him and he introduces himself. And then he is like, and being totally honest, I'm just here because my wife wants me to go diving with her.
Yeah.
And you could tell that he was kind of ready for a little bit of a rebuttal. And I looked at him and I was like, thank you for being honest. I respect your decision and like appreciate the honesty and being so transparent. And I didn't give him any special treatment. I wasn't like, I'm going to make you care about coral. I'm like, if you want to come in just because your wife dragged you here, by all means, I really don't care. I'm still going to get my, my paycheck at the end of the day. I'm still doing my job and I'm still going to have a great day out on the water working to restore these ecosystems. We went out and we did our restoration work and we popped up from that dive. And I tell you, when I thought he was like getting attacked by a shark or something, by the way that he was screaming on the surface, and he comes over to me and he's like this larger individual, in full scuba kit, like hugging me on the surface.
Oh my God.
Being like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so sorry for what I said. I love this. I love reefs. Corals are so important. Everything that you've taught me today, I want to go share with other people and I want to get them involved. So I think a lot of it is getting those people in the door and getting them underwater and, diving in, bad puns intended altogether. But once you get that, people are all for it. And for those individuals who already have that background, they're like 110% involved. Living down here in the Keys, I've done work over in Costa Rica. I've done work down in Mexico. All the individuals who live on these coasts and rely on these reef ecosystems already have that knowledge and they're looking to build and foster that further. They see you and you're sitting at a bar talking to them after a long day at work and you're like, hey, this is what I do. And they're like, thank you. What you are doing is helping restore this ecosystem, but also keeping my livelihood, my future, my family safe, because reefs are really important for us. They give us food, they protect us from coastal storms and flooding, and help underpin the entire nation's tourism industry, especially down here in the Keys.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of that forward movement within the community, which again, circling back to my previous point, really gives me that hope and that future for our reefs.
Wow. That's really awesome. Exposure is a key facet to education for sure, but you're doing that as part of your being a dive instructor. So Nick, are you dive certified?
Yes, I am. It's been a while.
Good answer.
Okay. But I am certified. Open water, I've done it. It's
okay,
great.
Awesome. Because Nick and I are going to come go diving with you and you can expose us to some corals. And
honestly, 110%. Just let me know when you're booking your flights. I'll come pick you up from the airport.
Right. Awesome.
Okay.
So,
right.
the NAEP conference is coming up in Fort Lauderdale. So keep that in mind. But I used to work in a dive shop in Florida. And so I got to go on a lot of free dives. But that meant I had to go along with some dive buddies that weren't my choice. And let me tell you, that's a fun experience sometimes. I can't imagine being an instructor and being in charge of newbies in the water. So what made you decide to be an instructor, and what is that process like? Because it's already interesting to just get dive certified.
Yeah. So funny story, I was living in the Keys and I finished up an internship that I was working down here and didn't really know what I was doing with my life. So I became what all of my friends have dubbed a scuba hobo, and literally just spent all of my free time and, more importantly, all of my money on diving down here in the Keys, which was great because you're building up that experience and getting that exposure. But you get to a point where you're like, oh my God, I don't have enough food for ramen. What's going on? So I was a DM at the time, and I had been perusing, different job opportunities and different job boards, trying to, get my foot in the door somewhere and continue to build my reputation and my experience within this field, because breaking into marine science is extremely hard and it's really challenging to get that initial foot in the door. And I happened upon a job posting in some random deep down Facebook group that was actually based out in Costa Rica. And it was working and helping establish a coral restoration nonprofit organization. And they also wanted to have someone with a strong background in marine science to be an instructor and help them kind of educate the individuals who were coming in to learn about the ocean ecosystem. But again, they wanted an instructor in that position. And I kind of was like, I'm just going to go ahead and shoot my shot and be like, hey, I'm only a DM, but I have a strong background in coral restoration. I've worked with coral restoration nonprofits before, and I'm a huge marine science nerd. Like, you want me.
Right.
And surprisingly, I had the interview and they were like, if you want, the only thing that we ask is that you get your dive instructor. And, you're all set. So we worked something out where I was able to actually go down to Costa Rica and work in that corresponding dive shop and actually work towards my instructor certification. It's rather intensive. because you're, again, teaching people how to become scuba certified, how to take compressed air and breathe underwater and do it safely.
Yeah.
There is a lot that goes into it. There's oral examinations, there's presentations, there's confined water skill sessions in pools, and then there's also open water skill sessions. You spend basically 2 weeks cramming for a scuba final exam. Yeah. And then you have everything all over again, but instead of it being in a 2-week period, it's like 2 or 3 days where you're running through everything. You have an examiner who normally flies in and, is very kind of staunch and is just like, go ahead, doesn't say anything until the end. And they give you, on a scale of 1 to 5, how you do, and, pass, fail, that whole thing. But somehow I managed to do it. And I'm able to now teach people how to become scuba certified and educate them on the ocean. It's a whirlwind sometimes.
So, I mean, do you have any idea of how many dives you've logged?
I just a few weeks ago actually went on a dive after a very long hiatus, and I think it is now having me sit around 650.
Oh my gosh.
Just a few, a casual 600.
Yeah, 60, yeah. Like you do, like we all do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So you talk about the dive certification. When I got certified in a quarry in April in Virginia, which doesn't sound very interesting or important, but it was 45 degrees and the water was so cold I couldn't feel my face. And I'm like, am I breathing? So do you have like a favorite moment, like when you've been diving, where just one of those quirky, weird things where you just kind of like, I'm underwater and I am breathing air and it's the weirdest thing in the world? Do you have anything like that?
So when I was working down in Costa Rica, admittedly, I love the people that I was working with. I loved the organization and what it standed for, but I kind of jumped a little bit too soon. I think I was feeling the overall pressure of society to be like, you are graduated out of college, you are working in marine science, you need a job to be successful. And I was basically grasping at straws. And again, if my old bosses are listening to this, I love you guys so much and there's no hard feelings there. But I kind of started to fall a bit out of love with diving. I was underwater and, was doing my stuff and teaching people, but there was no, razzle dazzle behind it anymore. It wasn't like those first times where, you'd back roll off the boat and you'd open your eyes and you're like, wow, I am underwater. And it got to a point where I almost actually quit. I was like, I'm going to go home. I'm just going to figure something else out and, kind of have a pivot in my career. And a couple of my friends who were working at the shop heard about a little island off of the Pacific coast of Costa Rica known as Isla de Caño, or otherwise known as the poor man's Cocos Island, because it's this, really cool experience, but not as expensive or as far away as Cocos Island. And everyone had been seeing whale sharks and manta rays. And I was like, my next weekend off, I'm going to go see a manta. Like, I'm going to have this magical experience underwater. It's going to be life-changing. We're going. So we're on our boat ride out. We pack all of our gear into like this small little taxi and we're like sitting on top of each other being like, let's go, let's go.
Yeah.
And from the point where we left the mainland to go out to this island was about a 2.5-ish hour boat ride out. And there was a gentleman who was sitting next to us. And of course, you're all divers. You're talking about your experiences, where you're from, what you're doing. And he's like, I've been out the past 4 or 5 days and we haven't seen any mantas and we haven't seen any whale sharks. Like, I'm really sorry to say it, but like, you're not seeing anything today. And I was like, well, crap. We went in on our first dive and we saw some cool stuff. There was a lot of coral, which of course my buddies were having to like drag me and be like, JD, we get it. Stop looking at the coral. We're looking for larger megafauna. And we come up from the first dive and I'm like, crap, there's no mantas. There's no whale sharks. Like, this is a really cool dive, but I was really hoping to see something different. And we're sitting, having our service interval, having water to rehydrate and eating some snacks. And the radio, like, all of a sudden just bursts into like flames of talk. And, they're like, everyone get back on the boat. Everyone, get yourself going. Let's go. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, something has either happened or there's a manta. And of course, I'm a gringo. I don't speak any Spanish. And the entire radio chatter is in Spanish. So of course, some people on the boat are picking up on it. But little old, like, innocent me is like, la-di-da, like, we're going to go on another dive. And we're sitting getting our gear on. And I kind of look at one of the guides and he kind of gives me this weird little smirk. And he looks at me and he's like, yeah, get in the water. And like, I was like a little kid. I was like, oh my God, goodbye. Yes. Like flips off the back of the boat and we're sitting there and we're waiting. And, I can still remember it clear as day in my mind. This like 21-foot pelagic manta just like slowly emerges from the blue. And I was like, cool, we're going to see this. It's going to swim by. And then that's it. And I was like, I'm content. Well, flash forward 45 minutes later, this manta is just doing loops with us.
Oh.
It would come and go and come and go. And you'd say, okay, we're done, and then it would magically reappear out of the blue. And no joke, I was sobbing underwater. Yeah. And it was like that whole aspect of kind of being reborn into the world of scuba. And it was like that very first time when I was a young little kid harassing my family, walking into an aquarium and being like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And it was that feeling kind of all over again. And I have the manta tattooed on my forearm because that's the manta that saved my dive career. And whenever anyone asks, what's your favorite moment underwater, I make them sit and listen to that story, because had I not had an encounter with a 21-foot pelagic manta, I honestly have no idea what I would be doing right now.
Wow. That's an incredible story.
Thank you. I love it. It's a nice little thing to like open up with and be like, oh, you want a good story? I got one for you.
I can see the children's book, The Manta That Saved My Dive Career, or something.
Let's go in on that. Let's talk further. We'll connect.
Right.
I have just recently started a publishing company, so we can chat.
Yeah.
I got your email. We'll talk.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I haven't really got to brag to Nick about this yet, but we were both recently in Hawaii for different reasons. Mine was work and travel, talking about the publishing company, actually. And Nick's is just for business. So I don't know that he gets to do as much fun stuff when he goes. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But I did also, I did the manta snorkel. Did you do a dive, or did you do the snorkel?
Out in Hawaii, it was the dive. My mom actually came with, and she snorkeled.
Yeah.
And then we were all diving. And
because I wondered how the dive would go, because they wanted us in the snorkel to like keep our arms and legs out of the way and stuff.
Did you have like the weird little like surfboard thing that you had to hold on to that had the light?
Yeah, it was kind of like a board, and you hold on, and then they put swim noodles, whatever those are called, under your feet to hold your legs up. It was really silly. And your arms get hella tired by the time 45 minutes is up. Yeah. However, they told us they normally get 2 or 3. But we booked a late trip and all the other boats were gone, and all 12 of the manta rays came over to our space.
Oh my God.
They were doing someone's a whole bragging. Ballet and dance. It was really, really magical.
Sounds great. Let's move on.
For me was like, I need to get back in the water more, because I've been away from it for so long. It's like, you kind of forget. So that's just
next time you're out there, Nick, you should get in the water and do it.
Yeah, now I have to, right? 12 manta rays, unbelievable.
A casual little brag.
Yeah, no big deal. I just saw 12 manta rays, no big deal. Yeah, like you do.
But let's switch. We want to definitely leave time here to talk about you and your experiences with being openly gay, cisgendered man in the dive industry and in ocean science. And so I read your article that recently came out. Patty's been a really amazing advocate for the community and been doing a lot of social media and posting and just trying to build awareness. So you have a quote in there that is really cool about, how we celebrate diversity under the water, but not so much above the surface. So what's kind of your experience with the environmental field like in that space?
Yeah, to be honest, I find it a little disheartening. I think the field of marine science is already so hard to break into, as I've kind of mentioned before, that when you're not fitting a set mold, sometimes it can be even more, challenging to break into. I was very fortunate to have a family that was very supportive, both of me being so open about my sexuality and, multiple aspects of my life, but also my passion for the ocean. So I know I am most definitely speaking from a place of privilege, saying that I am very fortunate to be able to be where I am right now. But I know for a lot of other individuals, that's not as easy. And some of them step away from their passions and from this field because of that lack of diversity and inclusion representation within the field. I had my idols growing up. I had Steve Irwin and Jeff Corwin and, everyone else that is amazing. And it's cool to see them doing it. But there was no, openly gay or lesbian, trans, anything, icons working in the field that had these platforms that were like, hey, look, you can be a marine scientist and you can be as gay as you want and still, succeed in life. And that was definitely a hurdle. And I know a lot of times when I started new positions, internships, as someone who's been out for almost 10 years now, I take a bit of time to open up with that and be like, hey, by the way, here's another little fun fact and tidbit about me. And I have that resilience and I, know who I am and I'm proud of it and will never, not shut up about it. But for a lot of other people who don't have that or, aren't as comfortable with it or are scared or whatever other compound it may be, that can really drive them away. And I've had a lot of friends and even some not really good friends, just random people who hit me up on social media who are like, hey, thank you so much for just being so open about who you are and what you do. I wish I had that strength. I've diverted from this field, but I'm so happy to see that someone else is doing it. So yeah, it's tough sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I say, I think it's great that you're an advocate for the community and that you've promised to move the conversation forward. And I think a lot of that, though, starts with like, what do we need to do in the environmental community to be more accepting?
I think a lot of it is passing the mic and giving those individuals the chance to speak about themselves and have that spotlight shifted to them. I think within marine science, we can spend a lot of our time kind of going back to the same people who are speaking and talking about, the same topics over and over again. And yes, they have pioneered this field and they have gotten us to a point where we can be so open and knowledgeable about it. But we need to take that time to shift to other people. Younger generations have new ideas, they have new approaches, new thought processes, new everythings. And by giving them that, for lack of better words, by, shifting that attention to them and one, showing them that they can occupy these spaces, but two, giving them the chance to actively occupy them, these new thought processes and new changes can be brought about. I even know just the article that you guys were talking about that my amazing roommate Tiffany wrote, having that just out there. And if I was, a young gay kid who was in the closet or whatever, and I read an article about, this blonde bombshell scuba diver working in the field of coral restoration, I'd be like, oh my God, I can do that. So I think that initial shift really just starts with making us all rethink what diversity and inclusion looks like within these fields, acknowledging that a lot of places are lacking it, and then finding those, advocates and individuals who are doing it and who want to speak and talk more. It's definitely a lot easier than it sounds, or a lot harder than it sounds, not easier than it sounds. Let me clarify on that.
Yeah.
But I think with a lot of organizations now taking these shifts, and even things like this podcast, just giving me the chance to talk about it too, is helping push that conversation in the right direction.
I want to thank you too for taking the time to do it, because like you said, it's hard to hear sometimes that people feel they can't be themselves. It hurts. And so it's not everybody's able to do what you're doing. Not everybody's able to talk. And so I just want to thank you for doing that. We really do appreciate it. Of course.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's like, again, just getting the chance to talk about it makes that younger version of myself know that there is a future for so many other kids and even adults in this field moving forward, because I'm seeing this huge shift in these conversations, which is amazing. So also thank you guys.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you. No, thank you. No, it's great though. It really is.
It is. When we talk about like lack of diversity for people of color in the environmental space, a lot of it is just exposure. But I think it's different complexity with gender identification because, like you just said, you were only out of the closet for 10 years, but your love for animals and things like that starts before that. So it's not necessarily lack of exposure. So it's almost like not only exposure, giving the role models like yourself to people for examples, but what else can be done, or what
brings them in,
the LGBTQ community out of marine science and diving and stuff?
That's a really good question.
Sorry, it was very complicated to try to pull it out of my brain.
Don't apologize. No, I mean, I think exposure is definitely like we just said, besides exposure is, that's the big question. And I actually don't really know if I have an answer to that. I think my brain recently has just been so exposure heavy, and starting those conversations and even just seeing the battle that just the topic of exposure has, has maybe stunted my, thought process on what else is out there. I know there are a bunch of other advocates who are working in the environmental field who are finding new ways. And whether that's, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Patagonia, the drag queen who's out like prancing in nature. I think Patty's doing a really good job because Patty's, talking about exposure, but then also providing resources for individuals. There's like a whole like LGBT.
You're gonna have to back up because I'm not familiar. I'm thinking you're talking about the company.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So when you're done with this, you need to go follow Patagonia on Instagram.
Okay.
They are a drag queen who is just out in nature talking about environmental issues and talking about diversity and inclusion within the fields of, environmentalism. They are amazing, like huge fangirl moment. But even like doing the aspects of like resources, like Patty has created this amazing LGBTQIA plus job board where individuals who are of the community can find places
Awesome.
that have, standards and, safety protections put in place and are accepting and welcoming to all walks of life. That way, even if, let's say, I was still in the closet and I found this job, I could go apply. And even if I don't want to be fully out yet, I can know in the deep down back of my mind that this place is still going to be accepting. And when I eventually get to a point of being able to speak my truth, whether that's in a year or 20 years or whenever it is, because everyone does it at their own pace, I'm not going to be met with like retribution, firing, anything along those lines. So circling back and, ending my tangent because I'm infamous for my tangents. I definitely do think exposure is number one, but I think right behind exposure is the creation of resources and then also the education of other individuals. I know we talked a lot about how my parents grew with me. I think when you come out as an individual, your parents also kind of have to come out and they become these advocates for the community. And I think creating further advocates that way, even if you're in a place that isn't super supportive and is like, yeah, whatever, diversity, inclusion, woohoo, we're going to change our logo for a month and then go back. That's a little bit of subtle shade at some places.
You're totally right. Yeah.
There's still other individuals who have this knowledge and can be there as a resource, whether they're a coworker, a boss, a friend in the field, anything along those lines. So yeah, kind of a hodgepodge of multiple things.
That's fantastic. I think that got us to where I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Other questions.
I totally agree.
I will be following Patty soon. I can't wait to see them.
100%.
So thanks for sharing that also. Awesome. I think conversation. Glad to have it. And we'll be following to see how your career progresses for sure.
Awesome.
And we want to switch gears a little bit though and talk about your travel.
Yes, we're all travel buds here. It's but this is crazy. We saw this. You've been to 5 out of 7 continents and one of them is Antarctica.
Yes.
What on earth was that like? How the heck did you get there? Tell us that story.
So there was an organization, I believe they're still up and running. It's been such a long time, called People to People. It's like a student ambassador organization that is all about like getting youth to, explore the world, have different exposures and experiences to different cultures and different backgrounds. And how the program works is once you get into it, when you finish your trip, you can nominate a friend for another trip. So one of my really good friends did a travel over to like England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, which is cool, but not really my speed, as we know. So she nominated me to go on that exact same trip. And we went to this whole like meet and greet where you learn all about it. They talk to you, because there's a whole application process, and you have to submit essays and writing pieces and so on and so forth to qualify. And we sat through this entire thing, and I was like deadpan the entire time because I was like, oh, it's history. And it's like building, like, oh my God, like that's like my like worst nightmare.
Right.
Fish out of water.
And,
mine too. I'm with you. I am with you on that.
And it actually turned out that the dates that the trip were supposed to run was actually dates that my family had a pre-scheduled vacation. So we went up to the coordinator of the program and we're, like, thank you so much. I want to do this, but I can't do the set dates. Like, what do you guys recommend? And they were like, just pick another trip, go like, and you can just apply for that one instead. So of course I scroll through the entire list and I'm like, no ocean, no ocean, no ocean, no ocean. And then at the very bottom of the list is Antarctica. And I kind of looked at my mom and I was like, we're going to do this one. And she was like, okay. And I was like, let's go. So I applied through the entire process. It was pretty intensive. And then I spent 2 weeks living on a old cruise ship that was converted into a research vessel. We flew all the way down to the southernmost tip of South America, which is Ushuaia. I always butcher it, so I don't think I said that right. And then we just popped over down to the Antarctic Peninsula. It was so freaking cool, and also freaking cool, if you know what I mean, because you were freezing to death. But yeah, it was kind of like an exploratory exposure-based trip where you were kind of learning the basics of the ecosystem. We stopped at a variety of different research bases and you spoke with the scientists. There was stuff with like the ozone, stuff with like incidental sightings and reporting of like whales, not dolphins. I'm going to say penguins, and I said dolphins instead. Penguins and seals. And it was just beautiful. I highly encourage anyone who gets the chance to go down there, because one of the best things with it is there's no humans. As like weird as that is to say, it's just so quiet and so peaceful. I remember we had one morning where they woke us up at like 6 a.m. to go hike up a glacier. And then we had like a forced hour of silence. And you just sit there and like you hear the penguins like making their noises. You hear like the ice like crackling. You hear the waves on the beach. And it was just like peace. It was so cool. The animals don't even know really what humans are. So they just come right up to you. Like I had a penguin come sit in my lap. You're not allowed to like go and touch them because there's all like the laws and regulations in place. But they're like, if they come and hang with you, they're deciding it, not you. So that you would just sit there cross-legged and penguins would just come and sit in your lap. And I was like, oh, this is a casual Monday. Like got a penguin in my lap. So yeah, Antarctica is probably like top of my list. I actually was a freshman in high school when I went. So admittedly, I did not appreciate it as much as I should have. Because I was like, oh, you know, traveling, haha. So I definitely want to go back. But the memories that I do have and the photos are absolutely mind-boggling.
Oh my God. Okay. So we get jealous a lot on this show, but that's like... I don't even know. I don't know if I want to talk to you anymore. You might have crossed paths
with Sandy. So our previous guest, she was an icebreaker in the Coast Guard. So she
did no way
trips and she may have even worked with that organization. She didn't mention names, but that was part of her job, was helping people get there. So that's pretty awesome.
No, I'm sorry. Can we go back to being jealous? Because I'm still super jealous. Like what on earth? Oh,
you're always jealous, Nick.
So Laura has the 12 manta rays. I have Antarctica.
Yeah. I mean... Okay, look, I've been to the Galapagos. I've seen some incredible things. I really have. That's too funny. Actually, I have a serious question about that, though. Like the trip down there, right? So the gap between, it's, you know, the roughest seas in the world. Was it like harrowing? Like, what was that like? Is it really as bad as it sounds?
Down, it was fine. So that's, they call it Drake's Passage, and they either say it's going to be Drake's Lake or Drake's Quake. So going down, we had Drake's Lake. It was flat, calm, beautiful. You know, we're all like, you know, walking about on like the bridge and like out on the deck being like, cool, this is great. We left the port, if you can call it a port, from, you know, the peninsula of Antarctica. And they were like, cool, everyone, tomorrow looks great. The next 3 days after it, do not go out on the deck. Like stay inside. And it was like the bow of the boat disappearing under waves, like water coming and like crashing up over top, like things are going left and right. And we were like, cool, are we going to make it back alive?
Oh my God.
I'm really happy that I got to experience it though, because like that like weird little adrenaline junkie part of me was like, this is amazing. So yeah, so we got the best of both worlds, if you want to call it that, going down and coming back.
Live to tell. That's awesome.
I know it. Gosh. So I know we're running out of time. I do want to ask one more official question before we get to the end. But so you've lived in Costa Rica, Morocco, Mexico. Is there any place that stands out above the rest as like, you know, where you'd go back if you could?
Oh, wow. I have to pick one.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I didn't say it was an easy question. I wanted to make it hard.
I honestly would probably say Costa Rica. Like,
you'd say that.
the Pura Vida lifestyle, as like gringo as that sounds, is amazing. Like Costa Rica is the perfect blend, I think, for environmentalists who want to get out and see animals and life, because you have so many different ecosystems on land, and then you look out at sea and you got a whole bunch of other ecosystems out there. So I would say Costa Rica. I like having to leave. I had to leave because of the pandemic and things shutting down. And that was like literally dragging me back onto the plane because I was like, I do not want to leave this country. But if I had to pick a second, I would say Morocco. Morocco was super cool, super different, and a beautiful country with beautiful and amazing human beings. But awesome. Costa Rica is still number one.
I love it. I love it. And I hate that we're at the end here, but it's been a great interview. We thank you so much for your time.
Of course.
And we just, like I say, we want to give you the time. So where can people reach out to you if they do have questions or they want to talk to you about what we talked about today? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I would honestly say the two best places to find me are going to be LinkedIn. My LinkedIn name is just JD Reinbott. So you should be able to find me, but it's doing a quick little search. And then also, if you want, you can follow me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is the Coral Queen, and it's Queen spelled with Quween rather than your typical U spelling. But I'm on there all the time. I'm unfortunately very addicted to Instagram, and it's always open on my phone.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, following Patty and you.
I love that. I love that. Well, again, JD, thank you so much for being here. A great interview. Really had a great time with you. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you, guys. It's been absolutely amazing. It's really cool to be here.
That's our show. Thank you, JD, for joining us today. It was such a fun interview. Really, really happy to have you on. Now, as always, please be sure to check us out each and every Friday. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. See you, everybody.
Bye.